day, this was a short uprising.
Who can Putin trust?
American aid has been essential to Ukraine maintaining such fierce resistance.
I still fear it mirrors the early days of Vietnam.
So had the two sides in Russia come to real blows this weekend, who would have won? And is the once mighty Russian military gravely weakened by more than a year of drawn-out fighting in Ukraine? President Putin is facing some very difficult options as he runs out of soldiers to throw at the front. Joining us now is retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash. Captain, great to see you again this evening. There's so much to unpack here, but at the end of the day, this was a short uprising. But what kind of long-term consequences could it have?
Well, I think it's weakened Putin significantly. And you have to look at what's morale like in an already low morale Russian army. Because I think what has really been happening here, Lindsay, is that this was not a coup attempt. This was a mutiny. And a mutiny is where you're trying to exact a change from those in power, not overthrow those in power. And this has been bubbling since the winter and into early spring, when Prigozhin and his people could see that the regular Russian military, the generals, in particular the defense minister and the chief of the general staff, were totally incompetent. And that's why what was supposed to have been a weeks-long exercise turned into, now we're over 16 months of this incursion into the Ukraine. You've got 20,000 Russian dead. The logistics are still a mess. And I think what Prigozhin was trying to do here was to let it be known to the Russian people, straight up, full up, that there is gross incompetence in the upper reaches of the Russian military, and that he was going to show how weak they were by leaving Ukraine, moving straight into Rostov-on-Don, which is the headquarters of the whole Russian Southern Army. And he went in there, took it over without a shot, was owning the place. Then he sent about 5,000 more troops on a fast move up toward Moscow. And that reacted with the Russian military sending some attack helicopters and an aircraft, which got shot down. And at that point, Prigozhin, I believe, said, enough is enough. I'm not trying to be the bad guy here and kill Russian young men like the idiots who are in control of the Russian military have basically squandered 20,000 lives in Ukraine. I'm trying to point out that they are stupid and should be removed from power. So at that point, he turned everything around. And unfortunately, about 16 Russian soldiers were killed before that happened. Now, he's not a sweetheart, okay? He's a thug, just like Putin's a thug. But he was trying to make the point, because he is to the right of Putin. He is a real hardcore Russian nationalist. And he was trying to make that point to the Russian people by an extreme show and tell.
And I think it's great that you point out this isn't a nice guy. Wagner, his group, is named after the composer Wagner, who people think Hitler was inspired by. That's why he named his group Wagner in the first place. But I do want to ask you this. People were taking pictures of Prigozhin with him when he was in Rostov. How much is this concern about civil unrest or a civil war that this may trigger because people are happy that he is saying finally that Putin is not doing a good job?
Yeah, he was treated as a liberator almost. People taking selfies with him and everything, and taking over the headquarters. And several Russian units had people defect and go with him. So this all comes down to now, who can Putin trust? Because his inner circle, they weren't out there on television talking big support for Putin. They basically stayed pretty quiet. So who can trust whom now? It's really a big unknown. So where this goes, only time's going to tell on this one, Lindsay.
Wow, so much to continue to talk about. Captain Nash, great to see you. Hope to have you back again real soon.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Continuing now, American aid has been essential to Ukraine maintaining such fierce resistance. But some conservative voices in the U.S. are pushing back against the open checkbook. So what's really at stake for the U.S. in this bloody conflict? And is it really worth it to keep up pouring taxpayer dollars into the war? Joining us now is Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee. Congressman, welcome to the show. You have been an outspoken critic of giving aid to Ukraine. But now that Putin is on his heels, does that change the way you think about the U.S. funding this war?
No, ma'am. My support is always, I support, of course, the folks of Ukraine having freedom and independence. Putin's a thug, and we all know that. I just don't support 114 billion unchecked dollars. And the profiteering, I feel like, that's going on, as always does with war. And this latest event over the weekend, whatever it was, I made the statement publicly: if you can't trust a bloodthirsty mercenary, who can you trust? This is a proxy war we're fighting with Russia, a country whose GDP is somewhere between Canada and France. And everybody's talking real tough now, but are these same people, when Zelensky was on the House floor, I said, are y'all still going to be cheering when China rolls into Taiwan, which apparently they have plans to do? So I worry about our country. I worry about our priorities. You remember President Trump tried to spend $4 billion to do the rest of the wall between us and Mexico, and the left and frankly some moderates said, "Oh no, we can't do that. That's crazy talk. That would financially ruin us." And here we've basically written a blank check to Ukraine. And right now it's over 114 billion, and I still fear it mirrors the early days of Vietnam. We sent money in first. They stole a lot of it, which they are. Then we sent armaments, and then we said, "Hey, wait a minute, those armaments are a little technologically advanced," and we started sending some advisors, which we have. And then we started sending our boys over there. Then they started sending home body bags, and so I'm very leery of this. Do I support Putin? No way, no way. He's just a dirtbag thug. But still, there's conflicts all over the world that we're not getting involved in. And this is Europe's war. We ought to let them fight it.
You brought up China. Many people have been concerned that they are watching what we are doing with the war in Ukraine and saying that if we relent, if we give up, then they would invade Taiwan. And that's the reason the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine. What would you say to that argument?
I think that's what they're watching. It's just like that balloon that flew over our country. They gathered a lot of information, but what they really gathered was our political will to fight and our political response, which was lackluster at best. We allowed them to traverse our country, and then we shot them down off the coast of Myrtle Beach, which was just ridiculous. I feel like we've been compromised by them. Our highest intelligence, our intelligence gathering is compromised by them. They have the ability on our eastern seaboards and our southern seaboard to watch the ingress and egress of everything that goes in through their positioning on some of our oil wells, their purchasing of farmland to control our commodities market, their use of the Belt and Road Initiative in Central America and parts of Africa to basically control our rare earth minerals, which apparently aren't as rare as we thought, because some of them are available in this country, yet we've delayed over 20 years in some of the mining operations through regulations of allowing Americans to get these things out of the ground. So in fact, we have to buy them from the communist Chinese, who use slave labor. And we know their mistreatment of so many of the people over there, and yet we're still doing business with them. So I greatly fear China, but I also fear that when it comes down to it, we'll sue for peace when we should be using our economic might to end any conflicts, which we should have done in Ukraine in the first place. But we were, unfortunately, through the oil contracts at the beginning of that war, as you know, we were actually funding both sides of that war. So we've got the American public needs to wake up about what's going on with our conflicts and who our enemies are and who our friends are.
All right, Congressman Tim Burchett, good to see you this evening. Thanks for being with us.